Yeah, I mean, I it was brought to our attention just in as far as a staff, as um, a sports psychologist that works with our organization, um, had basically said, okay, so um, you know, you're the body doesn't know the difference between whether you're doing something and doing your something and basically watching yourself do something. On the positive side, I would think probably on the negative side it would be similar. So I've done something wrong, and now I'm going to like watch myself do it again, like I'm reinforcing the negative. And I'd like to hear everyone's thoughts on that. But for as far as you know our process in regards to with the players, I think that we've had the bet, and you touched on it a little bit, Wally, as far as having them identifying what enabled us to do something and then flipping it and being like, okay, Bakersfield here, like, why weren't they able to deal with this rush? And again, Kim touched on it as well. But from our perspective, we've had a much better like a much better transference or a much better result, if you will, of guys understanding it, and within the smaller groups involvement. These are pros, and you think that shouldn't be a case, but um, it almost forces. And again, we mixed our groups up according to, like, strategically. We made sure we had you know an older guy that was going to kind of push it along, and then we had some other guys that were generally less involved and less engaged when we would run these meetings. And whether we sent out video the night before and then kind of put them on the spot the next day. And it happened one time that we put someone on the spot and it was clear that he hadn't watched the video. And now, like, he was embarrassed and everything else. But the next time we did it, he was sure to watch the video and to be engaged. And so I guess the challenge for us, and again, we have a system where they can all watch their shifts. And so we've said, okay, and we can tell whether they've logged on or not. And so we'll get halfway to the season, and then all of a sudden we'll look, because everything's happening and you don't pay attention. And then, the GM will come down and be like, okay, well, is everybody watching their shifts? And there'll be some guys that haven't even logged on, right? So it's like, okay, now how are we at? So again, like, and there's certain guys that will watch, like, our camera view. The AHL has a camera view, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's some guys that are, like, they're really engaged. So like our challenge is like, okay, how do we, without babysitting them, because at the end of the day, we don't want to, like, what are we doing? Like, if we're just checking boxes and making sure that they've logged in, I mean, there's ways around it, right? Like, of just, but how do we ensure that they get in the habit of watching their shifts? So I think we've tried different things. And again, I guess this goes back to even practices. Like, we can't run the same practice every time. So we've got to change it up. So in the way that we do it, sometimes we'll send the video, ask them about it the next day. Sometimes we'll split them up as according to lines, put them, okay, we get this line together, D partners together. So I don't know, I'm rambling here, fellas, but
Hey, Dom, do you find, is that group of five the magic, is that a magic amount of people to show video clip to get input from everybody from, do you find that is very effective, or there different?
I think it is. I think, yeah, because it, 4 to 5, I think, because so our challenge is that we have some guys that don't speak English as their first language. So so you got to think, like, first of all, like I've got to, like, I've been in that situation. My first year pro, when I went over to Switzerland, I had Yurstanov as a coach, and Tom knows him. He speaks Russian and bad German, and I spoke neither of those. And so I was like, they would fire off a drill and this, and I'm was a captain on the team before I went over there, and I want to be at the front of the line, and I'm like, oh, there's no chance I'm going first here, because the first time I did, they're looking at me, they're like, well, who's the stupid Canadian, right? Like, just like, so I bring that to the attention of our guys constantly, because we assume that they know, that those guys just know, right? Like, we'll talk to them, and they're nodding and smiling, and do you understand? Yes. Well, nobody's going to say no, they don't understand. So a lot of times I'll be sure, I'm like, he doesn't understand. I can promise you he doesn't understand. So to be able to have them in smaller groups enables them to have maybe to speak out, and sometimes it's strategic. We got a couple Slovaks on our team. So we'll put the two Slovaks together, because the one guy has a little better understanding of English than the other guy. So then now you've got them in a smaller group, and you're able to have the one guy, help out a little bit, and their comfort in having somebody that speaks the language. But so there's different challenges that way. And that's, that, so that's, but to answer your question, Terry, 4 or 5 tend to be, a good number, and the strategic placement of your leaders, to make sure you have someone that's going to drive the conversation and have enough emotional intelligence to understand the other guys within the group, that they're, and so the other element there too is that, like, and again, I don't know that, like, I don't think it would help to do it all the time, but there was a couple times, like, I was just there running the video. I was just the video guy. I was just there to facilitate the clip. Okay, put it forward, put it back out, and so the conversation was more organic at that point. When it's led by the coach, then there's a hesitation, because now they're thinking, well, what does he want me to say? Right? So, like, am I supposed to say this? And they're looking at my body language, they're looking at me. Well, did I do that right? As opposed to, I'm just like, hey, and then, and again, they're kind of prodding a little bit when they're starting to talk about it amongst themselves. And they're almost like a question, like, oh, well, should the guy be up on the D? And they're looking to me, and I'm saying anything, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, I don't know, I'm just running the video. I'm checked out, boys. You guys figure this out. And I'm not, obviously, but so then the conversation seems to flow, and it seems to be more organic, to the point where they feel a little more confident that they can speak. And that's, hey, that goes back to creating the overall environment. And somebody had mentioned it on here, the overall environment, that it's okay to have a question, and it's okay to have a question, or have an opinion, and something that's different than what they think we are thinking. And again, I'm digressing here a little bit, but we're just getting there as a staff to be able to challenge each other. And now we've been together 3 years as a staff, and we just had a Zoom call yesterday, in which I can honestly say it was the first time that we challenged one another. And I think it's all about our like journey as coaches, because I think initially when we were together, it was almost like we were afraid to hurt each other's feelings, because we maybe didn't trust one another. And I think that's, with players, it's even more so. Like, we've been together 3 years, and we're grown men, and we're all everything else, right? But I think there's this overwhelming reluctance and distrust of, especially in the minor league level, like, they're all separate entities. Everybody is there for themselves, right? Like, they don't think, if the team does well, I'm going to move up. So it's like, in those, again, those smaller groups enable to peel off some of those layers.
Kim, I'm curious, I've always thought we have so much to learn from women's hockey, and I can't imagine what's going on in your mind as Dominic's talking, because I believe that what you're doing is stuff that we will do in the male game. The sooner the better.
Yeah, I have two things, and I'll try not to go on too long. One, I mean, my most valuable video sessions have been, let's all watch the 5 minutes of video together in silence. And this half of the room is going to talk about what we did well with the puck. And this half of the room is going to talk about what we did well without the puck. And I literally just draw a line like, oh, split it here. And it's a bit warm and fuzzy. It gets them watching video, watching it critically. No one's watching mistakes, although I'm sure they're seeing them. But that would be something I would use to sort of teach them how to watch video with a critical eye, to Dom's point, instead of me standing there and saying, do this and this and this, or them wondering, oh, was that a good play? Which with the girls, again, they don't want to stand out for being cocky and being like, yeah, I'm awesome. And they also don't want to say the wrong thing and get the answer wrong of what Kim wants them to say. So I found that to be really valuable, even though I consider myself a very open, coach. They're still all deathly afraid of me. I have no idea why. But I would challenge you a little bit there on, I'm thinking about what you said, Dom, about the watching the shifts and the monitoring of, did the players watch the shifts or not? Right? And it would be no different than monitoring, did my players do the workout or not? Did they do this extra mental training or not? So, right, whether that's a logging in, a check mark. And I don't know, I would challenge you and go, well, you've led the horse to the water and they're going to drink or not. So I believe our job as coaches is to fill their toolbox. So I'll use mental performance training as an example. We teach our players many different ways to work on pre-game focus. We teach them things more like, a meditation, a quieter, sort of introspective. We teach them, kind of more of a high tempo coordination thing where they're using tennis balls. We probably teach them, 4 or 5 different tools that they could use to increase their ability to focus before the game. Some before the rink, some at home. I never ask them or check up on them to go, are you using any of them? But I do encourage them. I hope you find one you like, right? We've all had those players who have the earphones on, who are like in the zone. And if you tap them on the shoulder, they might lose their mind. And you have the kids who are dancing around. And as long as they get the performance that they want and that we want, I'm quite okay with both. So I kind of hesitate about prescribing, you have to watch these clips or you must do this particular mental performance thing before every game, because I'm not the same player that Dom is or that Wally is or that Tim is, and maybe something that works great for me doesn't work well for you. But I do find that the girls, anytime I ask them to do anything, they will do it and they will try it. But I'm constantly encouraging them to find their own path. Because, if you told me I had to watch my shifts, I'd watch my shifts. Personally, I don't know that I would find that to be the most valuable thing for me or the most valuable use of my time to get better. Right? But I would hope that you would trust me that I'm doing other things to get better, and you would be able to see that in my performance. Right? Like the proof is in the pudding. Right? If I never watch any of the shifts, but I'm consistently getting better, does it matter whether I watch the shifts or not? So I would just question, like, I get caught up in micromanaging too many little things, and are they really important? Or am I just teaching my players, giving them a bunch of tools to put in their toolbox, and then trusting that they'll figure out for themselves when they need the screwdriver and when they need the hammer and when they need the sledgehammer? Again, it is a little bit less controlling on our part, but I do think, at least at the minor hockey level that I'm at, I want them to have the tools so that when they move up to university or provincial or national team level, they have a bunch of different tools they can use, as opposed to say, these are the only tools we use and you must use these tools. So anyway, I'll just challenging the group there on that.
Hey, listen, I am total agreement. And like, I was in Calgary and was put in charge of running a warm up, right? And we had to do a dynamic warm up because it was everybody had to do it, and you had to do this. And in my head, I was like, I could see like not everybody has to do the same thing. Like you have to, as you say, give them the tools and just be like, okay. We had a Swedish coach that I had, and we would start the practice by doing sprints for the puck. And so we had Owen Nolan, who was at the end of his career and literally went and stood on the bench. He's like, I'm not doing this. He goes, I'm going to blow both groins out, right? But the point was made. He didn't never told us to warm up, but he basically said, if we're going to get the most that we want out of practice, like this was his point, if we're going to get the most that you want out of practice, you get yourself to the point where you can sprint at the beginning of practice, right? So it's the same thing with the video. The video, that the directive didn't come from the coaches. The directive came from who's watching all their clips, right? So that someone above my pay grade was saying, who's watching all their clips, and so hasn't watched it, and so hasn't watched it. And I agree with you. Like it's being like having them aware of why they need to watch the clips, or like, is that helpful? Or, and again, I 100% agree with giving them the tools. Just from our perspective, you know, we're getting a directive like, well, why aren't these guys watching their clips? And so it's like, okay, I can appreciate it because someone's managing me. But I'm in total agreement in regards that it has to be quote unquote organic, that they're, if they need to watch, like, is that benefit to them? Is it a benefit to watch, to, you know, and they have to, giving them the tools to determine if that's beneficial in their game. Is that going to enable them to improve their game, right? And so putting together, being a student of themselves as to what works for them, right? Because ultimately that's what it is. It's being able to invest in yourself, so you're going to figure out what the right thing is to do, right? Like and to your point, Kim, like I could tell everybody you need to get 8 hours of sleep. Well, that's not going to work for everybody, right? Some guys need 9, some guys need, right? Some guys need to nap, some guys don't need to nap. I can't feel, just like we can't play for the players, I can't feel what that player feels like mentally. I don't know if he's engaged from the start of the game. So, like to your point, are we giving them the tools and being able for them to problem solve that? And then they have to take, like, that was the one thing, Andy O'Brien, the one thing that training with him basically taught me was to figure out why I like the holistic picture of everything, right? Like he would give, like, you should do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And I was like, and then he was like, had me like to the point where I was inquisitive of, and I think he probably did it on purpose. Like he would throw all these things out there and then not respond on a couple of them. Like for instance, he mentioned getting blue glasses, right, or blue light glasses in regards to watching video. And so and then didn't respond when I had followed up. So I was like, well, why would he say that? So then I would research as, okay, well, why do I need to get, why is that important? And so then it takes you down the rabbit hole yourself, and you get so much more information about yourself as to why you're doing things. And so again, I'm all over the map. So
if I could interject, like there's a lot of things here. You know, I just typed in there, like I agree that you can't force feed something to someone if they're adamant it's not good for them. But it is, I think, part of our job just to have them stop and think, okay, look, I want you to try this and then evaluate. Like I said, if you've never used a hammer, you have no idea whether it's going to be useful for you or not, and what the benefits might be or not. So for your players to out of hand dismiss, like, hey, I can't watch myself, I can't learn anything, it's not for me, that might be the case. But I think it's our job to
kind of force a trial on them and have that open discussion. And as you guys were talking, I was writing down how many. Have you ever seen the old movie, The Paper Chase, Dom? No, it's basically Harvard Law School, and they're given reading assignments every day, and literally in a very hard-assed, cruel kind of way, the professor picks on students randomly every day to, hey Dom, stand up and give us your 2 cents on the Lindroth versus Walgreen case. And if you haven't done the reading, you're embarrassed within an inch of your life. Now, I was thinking, again, what you've been saying about your players. So maybe you don't do that publicly, but randomly, if you brought players in and, hey, did you watch your shifts last night? And if I say no, you can say, oh, okay, well, never mind then, get lost. And keep doing that randomly and make sure you include everybody. But eventually, some of the players might think, okay, I'm going to watch my shift. And maybe then if you don't even call them, they may ask you, well, how come you don't ask me if I watch my shifts anymore? And after 2 or 3 times, maybe you give up on a player, and maybe that happens. But maybe it's a way to sort of encourage that in a non-embarrassing way, like in an individual meeting, and giving them basically none of your time if they haven't watched their shifts. Bringing somebody else in, oh yeah, you watch your shift, they're in there for 15 minutes, getting some feedback from the coaches. Maybe the player starts to see, oh, maybe this could be good for me. But in the end, after a few sessions, hey, is this good for you or is it not good for you? Well, I really feel like I have to. I don't think I'm getting anything out of it. Okay, we think it can be beneficial, but if you don't want to do it, that's for you. Same battle with sports psychology. You can lead the horse to water, but all of them aren't going to drink, but some of them might. So go ahead, Wally.
Directed at the 2 L's. The reason we're having this discussion is because Al and Ramsey and Al Andrews, their players are coaching themselves. They're engaged. They're being brought up that way. The players we coach haven't been brought up that way. And I'm not saying, oh, they're just coaching themselves. They're given direction, but they're engaged in that direction. And I think ultimately, Dominic, you use the statement that you don't coach your players, you coach your parents. And I'll tell you right now, if your players ever question you, that's the best thing that could ever happen. What are they thinking? That's what you've got to know. What do they really want to at your level? And that may not happen, but think of the generation of players coming up the ladder that are learning to think on their own, that are accustomed to technology, like you, wearing blue glasses because you were engaged by Andy O'Brien. Well, think of these novice kids coming up the ladder being coached in minor hockey that way. Now, who knows how universal this methodology is going to, become the foundation of the way kids are coached. I don't know. But I think the potential for growth and learning, and as Alan's often mentioned, we have no idea how brilliant the kids are, how brilliant the mind is in terms of its capacity. So I really enjoy the discussion. I think it's great to have, just as a reminder, we're trying to solve problems of dealing with these players. And I think we've got to learn to coach to them. Kim?
Yeah, I love the point about, kind of getting the feedback from the players. And I know my players tend to be a bit older. But, for example, I'm having 15-minute Zoom calls with all my players over the next couple of weeks. And, part of it's to help them with their college hockey process. And the other part is I ask them for their feedback. We have a month off the ice. How could I help you? How could the coaches help you get closer to your goal? What could we do? And some of them are very forthcoming. Oh, we'd love to do more Zoom sessions, team building. I'd love to have my own workout program. And then I ask them open-endedly, like, do you have any feedback on how the season's gone so far? We only practiced. I got some great feedback from one of the goalies about, oh, it'd be great if we could do a couple more games like this because I'm really trying to work on this part of my game. And then the other goalie was like, it's good. But I've asked the question, right? And so if they had an issue, and one of my returning players, came to me earlier in the season and gave me some feedback about the on-ice coaching we were doing with 10 and 10. So her opinion was, well, it's better when you do it because it's a different, tempo and intensity than when your other coach does it. And I said, that's great feedback. I said, well, why is that? Oh, we like, feel like we're sweating and blah, blah, blah. Also, all of them had been coached by me before. None of them had been coached by the other coach before, right? Like I'd coached all of these players in previous seasons. So they were more comfortable with me. So I challenged her and said, okay, well, you're more comfortable with me. I've coached you for 4 years. You show up at a Kim practice and you think you know what you're going to get, right? But you're playing college hockey next year in U Sports and you have no idea how that coach is going to run a practice. Probably not going to be a team practice, right? It might be. So you need to learn how to be coached by other coaches as well, right? You can't just sit in your happy spot with me. And so it's been, I think in my early years of coaching, I was afraid to ask for feedback, even from like a 14-year-old girl, which is crazy, right? Because, maybe some of it is coming from the parents. You need to do more of this and more of this. Now I'm very comfortable with it to say, what do you guys think? Because it's not my team. Like, it's not my experience to have as much as it's their experience to have. So if they said, we want more team building, we want you to skate us more, I always ask for that at the end of the season. I say, what would you keep? What would you add? And what would you take away? And they fill out a piece of paper. It's completely open-ended. They don't put their name on it because I don't care who said it. But then I'm just looking at trends. Oh, a bunch of them want to do more strength and conditioning. A bunch of them want to do, less of this or more of this. I think it's, extremely powerful, but I think you do need to have a certain level of confidence as a coach to go, like your best player may tell you something you really don't want to hear, or your worst player may tell you something you really don't want to hear. But I think that's where we learn as coaches in getting that feedback from the players. So I appreciate you saying that, Wally, because I know that's been transformative for me as a coach. I think in the past, my first couple of years of coaching, I was like, it's my way or the highway. I don't really care what you say because I know best. Now I definitely know I know nothing. And I need their feedback to see what I'm doing when I'm just throwing darts against the wall. So, thanks for sharing that sentiment.
Alan, you have a quote. I don't know if you recalled it, but I post it quite often. Do you want to bring that up?
Well, I guess it is, and I'm going to have to leave right after this because I've got a wife that's she's isolating, so I got to. But anyway, when I started coaching 60 years ago, if I had known how little I know, I would have got discouraged and quit. And after all these years, I do know how much I don't know, and I realize I don't know very much. So I just try to keep involved with people like you guys and the kids to keep learning. And life is about lifelong learning, and we never and but lifelong dreaming is great. Western writer Louis L'Amour said a person that stops dreaming is a person that's already half dead, and I think the same thing applies to learning. So thanks so much. I've learned so much this morning, and I hope to see you all next week. Take care.
Thanks, Al.
Thank
Al
you.
Brad will be on next week, so please join us. Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
So I wanted to just sort of go back again and, sort of, I had a few thoughts on the, just on the whole batting around of, do you look at mistakes? Do you not look at mistakes? And again, to be perfectly clear, overwhelmingly positive clips, I totally agree, are the way to go and the way we have gone in my recent experience. I think it's maybe leaving a lot on the table to not address errors and mistakes, especially if they're repeated errors. You know, I think we all know, like from the talent code and other things, physiologically, and we've talked about this before, physiologically, to learn a new skill, you have to push the limits and you have to fail in order to get better. If you don't do that, you will not improve. And I think some of that translates to, the mistake error, like the tactical mistake error or technical mistake error area as well, where if you totally ignore your mistakes, then you're giving up a pretty valuable learning opportunity. And really what it comes down to is the inner game of tennis. And that philosophy and attitude that learning is mistakes are an opportunity to learn. And really it's learning the skill of releasing the emotion around the mistake. And like Peter Smith likes to say at McGill, don't think of this as bad or good criticism or otherwise. Think of my feedback as, is it useful? Is it helpful to, talk about and learn from this piece? Whether it's a positive thing or a negative thing. So I think in the same way that if we leave people to totally figure things out, lots of us, myself included, lots of us will never figure it out in the most beneficial fashion. We need to be Socratically led, and I think all opportunities are sort of useful. It's just sort of the way you approach it.
Yeah, Tim, if I was gonna pick out, let's say we're just disaster on D-zone coverage, I would go out of my way to find multiple clips, ideally with every player being in every clip. Because I think if you just teach from one mistake where it's one person turning over the puck, obviously that's going to have a different feeling for everyone than if it's, 3 or 4 clips of the same type of mistake being made again and again, and it kind of covers all the balance, like covers more of the team. But I think also is how we communicate. What did we do wrong here? Not what did you do wrong? What did Sally do wrong here? Mm-hmm. What did we do wrong here? Where could we be better here? And in my experience, showing the negative, I get an instant performance boost. I mean, that's the ironic part, is if I show like the Death March video sequence of everybody screwing up and every girl's like, yeah, I screwed that up, sucked there too, like our next performance is great. So part of it is, I think part of what we're trying to do is get the best performance out of our players and team too. Obviously, everyone's going to have a different personality in the team, but especially me, I've got very high performance players aspiring to very high performance things. It tends to give them a little, kick in the butt that they need to have a better practice or have a better next game. So I do get, a very powerful performance benefit out of showing those. But certainly if you went, oh, well, Sally screwed that up, then that's going to take you a little bit more south. So I would encourage having multiple clips showing the same or similar breakdown, and then no one feels like it's just them turning over the puck or standing in the wrong place.
We just had this debate with yesterday in regards to, it was about the example that was being used was turning the puck over on line rush 4, right, and just being able to get it in. And so we went through as a staff and we watched through some clips of different times when guys were coming up and there was undernumbered rush. So it was like a 1-on-3 or a 1-on-4, and being able to make a play to be able to continue the play. And, the argument was, well, to be able to make those plays, you have to give trust in the players that they know that they can make those kind of plays. And the counter argument was, yeah, but if he keeps turning the puck over, then, we're not going to get it in. We're going to get scored against. And I'm like, okay, but I understand the point, but like, I get it if the player keeps on trying. So it's like, I'll use Johnny Gaudreau as an example. Johnny Gaudreau was trying to follow the letter when it came to Bob Hartley when the puck got rimmed around to him. He was just chipping it out. And at one point, he was like literally a game away from being sent down. And, we had discussions with him and finally said, you have to make the play which your skill set enables you to make. And so instead of now chipping the puck off, he was getting off the wall, grabbing it and cutting into the middle and using his skill set, which is different than a Lance Buma, who was just chipping it off the wall. And the rest is a little bit history there. But the point being is that I get it that you should show them like the mistake, but in regards to being able to understand why they're making it. So, for instance, using on the line rush 4, you're undermanned, to be able to have the patience and to understand, okay, am I not scanning before? Like, why am I getting myself into this situation, right? And so you're showing a negative clip in regards to, hey, you're getting swallowed up here and having to put this in. But I think it's all in how you're, like, how are you showing it and how are you going to be able to learn from the clip? And I agree, Tim, does the player able to learn from the clip? Is he trying to change, what he's doing in regards to that situation? If he is, if he's not, then there's, it's a difference, but.
Dom, I just had my hand up. You said the coaching staff talked about this scenario.
Yeah.
Well, the ones who you need to ask, why is this happening, isn't you. It isn't the staff. You have to ask the players, why is this happening? And whether it's another scenario from another team, it happens over and over again. And we've coached about the red, green, yellow zones of the puck and how to manage it better, to be aware of those areas of turnover that can cause transition and be costly. Well, that's for the coaches. But not asking the players and engaging them as they grow up being asked, we better be prepared for the kids that are growing up and playing hockey at the going to play hockey at higher levels. So to me, you use the term "yeah, but." And Morris Lukovich has said there's certain languaging, don'ts and buts. You've got to really, and I think it just gets down to that. You're asking each other the question, why is this happening? And just ask the players, and it'll probably happen less if it's done the right way. That's Tim Bothwell's statement about right stuff, right amount, right time, but the right way. And that's the art of coaching at your level. And I think, people are figuring it out as the kids go up the ladder, and the game's going to go there. And it'll be a much better game to play and enjoy